So recently with the Silent Hill remake, I've been thinking about, well, Silent Hill. It feels great to finally see his franchise come again, and how nice of Konami to give us more games before it debuts his new pachinko machine. That being said, I'm concerned, but still excited. But this got me thinking of another survivor horror conglomerate.
Resident Evil.
Resident Evil, starting in 1996, has been one of the biggest franchises for Capcom, and specifically the ultra granddaddy of the survival horror genre. I find these two franchises very interesting because they have like a similar framework, but they are both early adopters of survival horror with tank controls. However, despite those things that they have in common, they go about implementing those things very differently. Just a brief example, Silent Hill 2, James is extremely depressed, dealing with internal turmoil, and in Resident Evil 4, Leon respects women. But I really wanted to carefully examine these two games and see how they go about tackling the same genre. So I'm going to lay into the first of these two games, Resident Evil 1 and Silent Hill 1, and see how they do about level design, gameplay, music, etc. So with that being said, let's start with... On Silent Hill, the game opens up with our protagonist Harry Mason on his way driving to Silent Hill. He gets into a little car crash and ends up wondering where his daughter Cheryl is, and he leaves his car to go look for her. Afterwards, the world around him starts to shift, and he encounters this strange creature, and he is then cornered and dies. And he finally wakes up to be greeted by police officer Sybil. So for Resident Evil side of things, you have the Special Tactics and Rescue Team, also known as STARS, are sent to report to Spencer Mansion. And when they land they run into zombie dogs, and in order to escape them, they have to take refuge in the mansion. And there you look around and search for more STAR members, and specifically your partner, Chris Redfield, at least if you're playing as Joe. One thing I like about both of these intros is how they essentially introduce the controls in a stress-free environment. If you look at the mansion, there's plenty of room to maneuver, and in the case of Silent Hill, there's also plenty of room to maneuver inside the alleyways. And it's really good, especially in the tank control side of things. It gives you a nice feel for the controls, which is great into my next section, that of which being about Resident Evil 1 holds up really well on a regular gameplay basis. So, going back to what we understand before, you have the basic tank controls, and you don't have to worry about the camera, since in this game the camera angles are fixed. By the way, the version you're seeing is the DS version, which is probably one of the better versions, which adds 360-degree turning. Anyways, going back to the topic at hand, you have to constantly pay attention to what resources and what zombies you killed. Is it actually worth killing that zombie in the first place? How many item slots you have? And it's amazing how Capcom got so much right with their first game loop on the first try. Meanwhile, the gameplay in Silent Hill has a completely different focus. First off, you have to realize that in Silent Hill you almost have unlimited resources. And even when you start the game, you are just gifted with just abundance of stuff. For example, 8 minutes into my playthrough, I was able to get 4 healing items in one of the first locations, no problem. So in Silent Hill as well, to mention, the camera angles aren't really fixed, and you can directly control it with L2. I don't really mind this system, plus we got the 360-degree turn before it was introduced in RE3, we get it. Cool stuff. But Harry Mason at the start of the game has so much stuff, it's kind of ridiculous. But that being said, it's not really the focus of Silent Hill, so I find it really interesting seeing between these two games. But its loop is good enough, and plus it doesn't go in the way of the 2024, and the level design of Resident Evil still stands up today. If you look at the map given here, the main halls will connect multiple areas, but there are multiple staircases that connect back into the main hall. It's crazy because everything's spread out enough so it feels that you're actually exploring the mansion, but oftentimes when you have to travel from one side of the mansion to the other, it's really intuitive because it has that one place that connects all of them. And I just love how much freedom the place gives you to explorers. The keys you gather opens more place, and it makes it really replayable because although you have places that you need to go, there's no set order in the way you tackle that objective by itself. And could say a similar thing about Silent Hill, however, comparatively to Silent Hill, it's not as interconnected as the mansion in Resident Evil, and doesn't loop back into itself as intuitively. That's not to say that it's bad, it's just saying that Resident Evil is more intuitive design from a level design perspective. However, during this whole time I've been saying what Resident Evil does comparatively better. Now I want to say the opposite, and there's one thing that Silent Hill does undoubtedly better, it is definitely the... Silent Hill will unironically hit you with music that sounds like two construction workers fighting over the last slice of salami. Right after, hit you with this. Amazing how Silent Hill will immediately fill you with this looming sense of dread that someone's watching you, but you don't know who, and immediately follow that up with emotional turmoil. It's amazing. Resident Evil would still be Resident Evil without the music, but I can confidently say Akira Yamaoka is Silent Hill. But it's not to say Resident Evil doesn't have good tracks. In track, one of the best tracks that plays in the series is actually located in the mansion part of the basement. Now, in my opinion, the story is better in Silent Hill, but it can never be as groundbreaking as the soap opera that is Resident Evil.
Richard, what happened?
Oh, Jill, this house is dangerous. There are terrible demons. Ouch!
Real talk, even talking about the first Silent Hill, there are so many more interesting ideas that are present about the mystery of Silent Hill, memorable moments overall comparatively than Resident Evil. You have heavy topics dealing with even domestic abuse with characters like Alessa. You have, who is this Kaufman guy? Can you even trust him? And you slowly uncover how he's directly involved in what's happening in the town. And finally, my favorite moment in the story, Lisa's realization at the end how she is one of the enemies you've been fighting this whole time, the nurses. Her slowly realizing that she's one of the nurses you've been fighting. And your character going slowly backing away towards the door and has to finally leave you while Lisa cries alone. Gives me chills every single time. Now let's go back to Resident Evil, shall we?
That's right. This is the ultimate life form. Tyrant. Rick? Stop it.
Wesker, you're pitiful.
The horror of Silent Hill is still one of my favorite things, and it's still, in my opinion, one of the things that still hold up today. One of my favorite mechanics is actually the game's radio. Pretty much how it works is the closer you get to enemies, a lot of the radio rings. It's great because when you're traversing through large, expansive areas, you're pretty much on constant edge because you know something's nearby, but you don't know what. Also, every single location with the other world is honestly terrifying. And mention that same composer Akira Yamaoka, also with this heavy industrial sound, makes it probably still one of the most unnerving experiences I have.
Leon, please. The menopause is kicking in, and she has 3 cats, and one of them is named Albert Whiskers.
You know, with all things considered, I really enjoyed my time with both Resident Evil and Silent Hill, despite their obvious strengths and weaknesses. Playing both of these games really gave me a new appreciation of the survival horror genre. By the way, if you haven't played either of these games, I highly recommend you doing so, especially since the original Resident Evil collection is now on GOG. And lastly, I just wanted to say this. Welcome back, Silent Hill. Thanks for watching.